is deploying Windows 7 in the enterprise. Sorry to get you guys up early this morning, but hopefully you're awake enough to learn something this morning. My name is Darren Hall. I'm with the Microsoft Services Organization. I'm a mobility architect. I focus on helping enterprise customers work with our mobile products. And so I'm here to talk to you today about how Windows Phone 7 fits into the enterprise, some of the deployment features, some of the deployment concerns, some of the deployment topologies. A couple of housekeeping things. We need to basically let you know that there will be a chance, only if you stay towards the end, to win a phone here at the Microsoft booth downstairs. There's a place where we have all the phones that you can pick from. So any phone that you like, you can pick from there. So if you can hang around towards the end of the session and then answer the question correctly, then you have a chance to win Phone 7. So just quickly go over the agenda. I want to have a quick overview of some of the platform features. We're going to talk about the roadmap for the business features. We're going to also have a little section on risk management. We're going to talk a lot about Exchange and what the features are for deploying with Exchange. We're going to talk shortly thereafter about the device management features that come with EAS, SharePoint, Phone 7 UAG, line of business applications, and distribution methods that we use there. We're going to have a demonstration on and some discussion around that. We're going to talk about authentication, data encryption, and also Windows Phone 7 updates. So we got a lot of ground to cover this morning, so I'm going to try to jump right in here. So concepts for what are we doing for the business in Win Phone 7 really are all about captivating the productive experiences and using all those cloud services that we have out there that you're well aware of. So the Windows Live, Zune, Office, and Xbox Live. And working with on-premise and hybrid cloud services like Windows Azure, Microsoft Exchange, either on-premise or in the cloud, SQL Azure, and of course Office SharePoint, which could be SharePoint Office 365 or an on-premise located SharePoint. On the platform side, you're well aware, probably for those of you that have done some development, that we have XNA, Silverlight, Expression, Blend, which is our designer tool, and Visual Studio, which is the complete suite of development tools. So the roadmap for what we have today and what's coming, we feel like today that we have a compelling set of end-user experiences in the business arena, particularly in the productivity space with Office integration and SharePoint integration in the phone. We're the only phone in the marketplace that actually has the full cycle of Office suite on the phone. It allows you to round-trip documents, open documents, and round-trip them to your desktop with full fidelity. We have just released the spring update with Verizon and Sprint. Verizon coming soon, and Sprint already in marketplace. You're probably well aware of our other carriers that are currently live. We have AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint that are currently live, and Verizon coming soon. We've also released an update in the spring update that helps for legacy 2003 Exchange users. How many people have Exchange here? All right. How many people know what version they may be running? Okay. Any 2003 users? Okay, so this is important. There's quite a bit of Exchange 2003 still in the marketplace, and we've released in the update. There's a change where you're allowed to do GAL lookup within the spring update. So that's a big feature for many of the 2003 users. How many folks here have a Windows 7 phone currently, or have them in their organization? Okay, so quite a few. So coming in the near future, we're going to have extended productivity scenarios around Lync and Office 365. And this is really the Mango timeframe. This is what we're talking about here, which is the fall release. How many people were at the keynote? Did you get to see the Lync demonstration? Okay, I'm not going to be showing you the Lync platform this morning because I'm just limited on time. But I would encourage you to go and watch Augusto's session where he goes into depth, not just the keynote, but there's a session on Office 365 and enterprise features where he goes through the full Lync demonstration. So if you're interested in that, you should check that session out. We also are going to have enable new application categories, background processing, which is a really big feature. I'm not going to talk about the background processing much today, but that's a huge feature for our third parties that allows for them to write interesting clients such as Skype that we announced in Mix and other things like that that need to run in the background. Lync is a good example of that. As you probably can imagine, if you're on Lync and you want to pop over to email, you'd like to be able to pause that or let that actually run in the background, and that's the whole key to that particular feature. So Lync would be staying in the background, keeping your presence, keeping those chats live. You could switch back and forth and then keep those processes running. In addition, we'll have IE9 and HTML5 support and SQL, which is a really big feature that our enterprise set would very much like to have back. And we have data leak prevention piece, which is a really big topic these days amongst the phones in the market. And we're gonna demonstrate that this afternoon or this morning later in the session. And we also have a number of other countries that we're going to have language support, live support, marketplace support. And so I want to mention that. I'm not going to go through all the countries. There's quite a few changes in the country and language support. So if you've got multilingual and geographic dispersity around the world, you might want to look at that, what we're supporting. So risk management with the phone. Just want to go over a few topics here to make sure you understand what's currently in the phone, have a fact-based conversation about what actually we've done in the platform to try to protect data. So obviously the idea of protection of data at rest is protecting access to your confidential information. Normally this is achieved via device lock, remote wipe, which allows you to remote wipe the device in the case that it gets out of control of one of your users, and then encryption of the data. The weaknesses of that are, like any security, the more secure it is, the more difficult it is for the end user to use. So the end user experience goes down as the security goes up. So the weakness really is lack of manageability and then key exposures. So let's talk about the storage that we have in Windows Phone 7. We have a single partition model in the file system, which means that whether you have one piece of memory or two pieces of memory, for example, the SD card and then main memory, it's treated as one. It's a single partition. Those are joined via SD. The SD card's actually linked with a lock command that's part of the SD card specification. How many people are familiar with the SD card spec? Okay. So I would encourage you to do a little bit of reading on this, but basically the Standards Association around the SD cards has a number of features that they provide for SD cards, and not just for phones, but for anything that uses an SD card. And one of the features is the lock feature, which allows you to lock SD storage to a 128-bit key pair. And so that's what we're doing in Windows Phone 7. So removing a card will reset the phone because you're basically removing a piece of the main memory. And so that's the way that the SD card locks standards work. And if you're interested in how that standards spec looks, you can come up afterwards. I'll send you to a link on the spec. So access to this card is prevented from any other device. So once you've removed this card, not only is it render the device inoperable with that card, you have to restart the device, and it will have to reset. But also that card is not going to be readable by anything other device that doesn't have that 128-bit pair. So you've secured it from not only unable to run on any other device, but you've also secured it to be able to plug it in somewhere else and then read the information pursuant of that. So this is how we secure our storage in Windows Phone, and that's about enough of that. Any questions on the storage piece? Okay, so currently we have in the shipping product we have Simple Pen. In Mango, which is available later this year, and I'll show you this, and I'll demonstrate this in a little bit, we'll have the ability to deploy and provision via Exchange the requirement for an alphanumeric password. This is manageable within ActiveSync, and I'll show you how that's done. You can manage the number of characters, the complexity of the characters, whether it be uppercase, lowercase, mixture, alpha, and numeric mixture, the length, so you have all those features built in, and you can manage that with your Exchange environment. So we've talked about a little bit about the SD card and the mechanisms to protect the data. The file system spans the device and SD card if there is one. We have no phone file system access via a PC or any third party. The only way you can get information onto the phone is with Zune, and that is not documents or email. So basically, you're able to see content via video, pictures, and music to the phone via Zune. So there is no what we call side loading of data onto the phone. You can't plug it into your PC and drop files on the file system. It is not exposed to the file system. The PC is not able to get to the file system. And this is a concept that's a little foreign to most of the marketplace, because basically what we've been trying to do is the reason why we have encryption is because people have removable storage. That's the main reason we have encryption in the marketplace today, is removable storage. Well, we've removed the removable storage problem with our platform, so that changes kind of the attack surface of the platform itself. So when you're thinking about why do I need encryption, the main reason why you're thinking that is because that storage can be removed and used somewhere else. Well, this is not the case on our platform. So that's one of our phone data protection mechanisms. We're also going to talk in a few minutes here about IRM, and basically that's information rights management. How many people have heard of information rights management and know what that is? Okay, good. We're going to demonstrate that. Basically, this is a way for us to control the flow of email, who it goes to, and how it's treated. So and I'll show you this a little bit more in detail here in a few minutes, but basically you're able to select what kind of handling the message is going to have within your environment. So can I forward it? Can I reply to it? Can I print it? So all of these are controls on what happens to email once it leaves your inbox. And this is a very powerful feature that we use quite a bit internally at Microsoft, and a number of other enterprise customers use to control the flow of email and its use. So that's a very powerful feature for data leak prevention. Malware protection. We have the goal of preventing malware tools, hijacking, and accessing the system. This is normally achieved by controlling what applications are deployed on the phone. In other words, the phone applications are tested for the existence of malware, and only then are they approved for deployment in the marketplace. And this keeps the flow of malware and malware attacks down to a very in a controlled environment. So we'll talk a little bit more about how we do that when we talk about the marketplace deployment processes and how apps they're ingested in the marketplace and deployed to the phone. And the main control here is that every app that goes onto our platform is tested by the application team, the marketplace team, and verified that there isn't malware existing in the platform. If they happen to miss something, like you've seen on other platforms, and an app gets out and they find out that it's not actually a FART app, it's an app that allows for malware, then we can actually revoke that cert. So there's ways to prevent that before it happens, and if in the event of an unforeseen malware outbreak, we can restrict that app immediately. The weaknesses for malware are jailbreaking phones, the verification that the actual build is an intended build for the platform, and time sensitivity. So let's talk a little bit about malware protection. The key malware protection for any platform is managed code. So managed code allows us to control the applications that are manifest, what they're allowed to do on the phone by certificates. So basically what we're going to do is, and we're going to go through this in detail here in a few minutes, but basically we're able to control what apps go to the phone and what they're supposed to do when they get there during runtime and install. And so this is the main threat for malware is introducing unknown applications, and we don't allow that because the only applications it can install are coming from the marketplace. So in addition to the control of the apps themselves, we have application sandboxing and least privilege model, which basically, you're probably familiar with least privilege model, which basically only allows the apps to do the least amount of things that they should in order to achieve their result. And this is controlled in the manifest at runtime. So every application has a manifest of what it can do. Can I access GPS? If I ask the user, can I access local storage? Can I access the data network? All these things are in the manifest, and they're enforced at runtime. So if any app is trying to do something outside of the manifest, then the control system immediately shuts that down. So there is no side loading of apps, as we talked about before. The only way to get applications onto the device is via the marketplace. And we also have controlled background processing of applications, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. As far as marketplace, we also have developer verification. You have to, for those, how many people have got a verification, or developers here in the audience here that are in the marketplace? Okay, good. So you guys know what I'm talking about here. Basically, every developer that's going to submit apps to the marketplace goes through a developer verification process that proves that they're actually a real person, that they're verifiable from a particular marketplace that allows for ingestion of apps. We have certain countries that have not been released for marketplace, so those are their limitations there. But we basically have a certification process that we go through a third party that verifies that they're actually a person, that we can find them, that they have some repeatable verification of their existence, and a number of other things. And then they're verified and able to certify and submit apps. We also have a couple other things that help us with the malware protection piece. The Internet Mobile Lockdown, which basically the IE has quite a bit of malware protection built in that allows us to keep things like ActiveX controls that would try to run, and a number of other pieces are immediately, they're not allowed to run. So there's the threat level and the attack surface area of this platform is completely different than prior versions, and it's a much more secure environment. We also have a secure Windows Phone update, which helps us control the actual builds that are released and make sure that they're verifiable and controlled as well. Yes, question? That's a good question. The question was, can you download applications that run Silverlight? Silverlight browser support, I believe, is version 2 at the moment. And so we don't have in-browser support for Silverlight, but we support Silverlight version 2 in native apps. So there is no Silverlight support in browser. I don't think we have anything to announce about that for future plans. No. Nothing I can talk about today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the app lifecycle. So the Windows Phone Marketplace is how we control distribution and installation of apps. Phones are only allowed to install applications that are signed ZAP packages, XAP packages that are signed by the marketplace. These applications are searchable and findable, locatable with either the Zune client or directly on the phone. The phone handles all aspects of the installation, but the individual apps are only taking instruction from the marketplace on which apps to install, and they are enforced by the manifest that is required via the app. So the app, when it's ingested in the marketplace, has a manifest that controls what it's able to do and the nature of the app, and the manifest is controlled. The manifest is what determines what's done at runtime and what's allowed at runtime. So the users can control when the install, update, and uninstall happens anytime they like, okay, except in the case of a revocation event. So this is important because in previous versions of the platform, you were not allowed to uninstall certain applications. But in this platform, you're able to uninstall, the user is able to initiate installs, updates, and reinstalls and uninstalls anytime they like. So a good point here is individual apps do not control their own life cycle on the phone, meaning if there is an update, right, it only comes from the marketplace. You can't actually install anything directly on the phone. You have to actually be notified by the marketplace that there's an update, download that update, and then the phone will handle the update of that app. Question?
What about applications that come on the phone from the carrier?
Yes. That's a very good question. So the question is, what about OEM apps? I can give you an example. So there may be a number of applications that the carrier or the OEM may want to deploy on the phone as part of the build. You can also remove those apps anytime you like. It's a very nice feature. One of the things that I noticed on some of the AT&T phones is since their name starts with A, that all their apps appear at the top. So, you'll notice a bunch of orange at the very top of your screen because their color is orange, and you're able to remove any of those apps. Question?
So in the enterprise, if we're wanting to deploy applications to our users, we have to get our applications certified by the marketplace?
Yes. And I've got a section on that, and we'll go through that. I think it'll become more clear on what we do there. You have to think about this while we're going through the presentation. The marketplace is a distribution mechanism, not necessarily a security mechanism, right? We can verify who we sent the app to, but it's not intended to secure enterprise apps. So if we have enterprise security concerns, then we need other forms of security, and I'll talk about that as in my enterprise section. Okay, so as I said, the manifest controls where the folder is installed, or where the application is installed, how it's running, what's going to be enforced at runtime, the policies on the phone exactly. The policies on the phone, they are basically controlling all the allocation of the processor, the app responsiveness, and making sure the phone is responsive to the things that it's supposed to be doing, like phone calls and text messages and so forth. So one quick thing I want to go back to here. Every app runs in its own isolated storage. So there is no capability of an app reaching across to another app and sharing its storage. So if I have an app A and it needs access to some application data that's in app B, that's just not possible. They're sandboxed. These apps are completely separate. There's no way for a process to reach out and grab another app and use its storage. Every app has its own local storage and sandbox. That's another security feature that allows to keep the malware, or keep malware from occurring. There's no way to span applications and data. So back to secure access. What we want to do is keep people from snooping on the wire. We want to keep confidential information from getting out. We also want to provide some form of use for this that's relatively easy for users, which is the big problem. That's normally achieved with VPN, but again, that is a weakness because VPN introduces not only poor battery life, but complex user situation and a manageability nightmare. So how do we do this? Here are the features for Windows Phone access. We have HTTP and HTTPS, obviously 128 and 256 SSL. We support these forms of Wi-Fi authentication, Open WEP, WPA, Enterprise, and Personal. We also are announcing this week that we support hidden Wi-Fi access, which is a big win for a lot of your enterprises. How many people have hidden Wi-Fi at their organizations? Okay, good. So in Mango, we will allow you to, I'm not going to be able to show that to you today. It's going to be in a future build than I have up here on stage, but basically we have the ability for you to connect to a hidden Wi-Fi. This is one of the oft asked for features and upgrades to the current release. So that's good news for us enterprise users. We also have Bluetooth 2.1, which is our driver only, and the big news in this regard really is we're going to support WinSockets. So you'll be able to access UDP and TCP over WinSockets, which right now limits the kinds of network apps that we can deploy. So you can imagine how happy some of you developers are that you're able to access these kinds of network protocols. That's a really big win for a number of third-party application developers and the marketplace in general. On the authentication side, we have certificate authentication, which we'll talk a little about later. We have NTM for Outlook and SharePoint and IE, PEEP MS Chat for enterprise auth, for Wi-Fi, and then we also support UAG for SharePoint Mobile. How many people are using SharePoint at their enterprise? Okay. How many people are having trouble giving their users access to SharePoint with their mobile devices? Oh, come on now. All right. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but we basically have that feature built in and a really good user experience on that. So I talked about the Zaps. I'm not going to go too much into this. Basically, each app is a Zap file on the marketplace. It's uniquely identifiable, licensable, and its own object. Application deployment is handled via the certification, the ingestion of that app in the marketplace, the certification of that, which is a separate process, and then the signing of that app with a app marketplace certificate. And this is all happening after you've gotten your developer verification done and so forth. Once that app is certified, we then apply a certificate to it, and then per the developer's demands, we can also decide when that's available. This is another key advantage in our marketplace. If you're developing an app that, say, you want to run, we want to have available for, say, July 4th, for example, you can say it will not be available till July 2nd, even though it's in the market, it's ingested and it's verified, but it will not be shown until the date you pick. Or you can decide when you submit your app that as soon as it's verified, it goes into the marketplace. So this gives the developers a little flexibility in terms of how they deploy their apps, when they're available, and the marketplace. So this is a little bit of detail on how the app hosting and runtime works. The system provides a host process for all app code. You can see that the frameworks that are running here. We have the runtime language, the common language runtime. We have XNA, Silverlight, JavaScript engine, the framework. All the app code is executed in the least privilege model, and we talked about that before. So when you submit the app, it's going to get the least amount of privilege that it needs to run, and that's the key thing. This is a very common concept in security realms. As I said before, there's a sandbox enforces. The sandbox enforces the host process to run in its own sandbox. So it's isolated, which keeps our apps from trying to transfer across other apps and doing other untoward things to the platform. So this is kind of an eye chart, but so here's a little easier diagram to see on the security model. You can see the number of chambers, and here most apps run in the least privileged chamber. We have 4 chamber types. The capabilities are pretty straightforward. There's a central repository of rules that keeps these things in check, and it's expressed mainly in the manifest that I talked about before. So when the manifest is enforced at runtime, that's when the rules are set for each app. And this defines the security boundary and what happens in that sandbox on the phone. All right. So here's a quick installation flow. On install, you have a signature check to make sure that that app is still verifiable and it's not been revoked. There's a retrieval of the license. It creates a license state on the phone saying that there is a valid license. We set up the sandbox for that storage for that app. We then provision what kind of tasks the device is allowed to use and allowed to employ. We create the folders that are going to be used, and then we provide the isolated storage for the whole process. And this is basically what happens when you say, I want to install this app. Right after you've searched for an app, found one, and hit the install button, this is what happens. And at the very end there, you'll see that the application is installed and it's available for use. At that point in time, the marketplace is also notified that this particular live ID, which is how we install, how we authenticate you to the marketplace, is notified of the apps that you have running and installed. So if there are any app updates to that particular app coming from the developer, then your device will automatically be updated or notify that there is an update available. So if you've noticed in the phone, occasionally you'll see a number below the Marketplace app right on the home screen in the live tile, and it'll have a number, and that's basically telling you that there are updates available. And so you don't have to continually go look to see if there are updates available. So here's the update flow that I was just talking about. Basically, once you've received notification there is an update, it's much the same. We basically update the license state. We reuse the same sandbox. The first thing, though, that we do before we go too far is back up the data that's currently existing in the app, so you're not going to lose any of the data in your app. We wipe the install folder and then re-provision it. So it's a very quick process typically, and a very seamless process, and the user really doesn't have much to do, which is the whole idea. All right, so here's the revoke flow. Very similar, only basically the revocation updates is updated immediately, so that basically the app cannot. This is what happens when we find something that's untoward in the app, or perhaps the app is being used. We find some kind of content that's in there that's not appropriate or some such thing. We can then revoke the app directly from the marketplace. And what'll happen is when the user tries to run the app, one of the first things that the app does is check to see if the license is good for that app. It'll look to the marketplace for that, and when it gets the signal back that that the app has been revoked, this process will kick off. If there's no connection, they won't be able to receive the notification that it's been revoked. Yeah.
Will enterprises be able to control app modifications as well? Like if an enterprise decides they don't want to have an app on their devices?
That's a good question. So if the app is in the marketplace, users can install it. But if there is some other type of security for the enterprise app, which is what I'm proposing you do, and we'll talk more about that, then you could then control whether they're able to use the app. But as long as it exists in the marketplace, they would be able to download it. So there'd be two things that needs to happen there. One thing would be if you don't want anybody using it, you need to remove it from the marketplace. If you want certain people to not be able to use it, then your security model needs to control that. And we're going to talk about that. There's ways to do that. So deploying Windows Phone with Exchange Server. These are the policies that we have available now, and I think you can probably see, can you see in the back there, the yellow at the bottom? Those are the new policies that are added via the Mango release. These policies are currently existing in Exchange, but the phone is going to add support for those. And I want to show you what that looks like. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. No, these are only the ones in yellow are new. Everything else is existing in the current release. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to switch over here to show you what I'm talking about. So these policies here are what's important on the Mango release. At the top here, you see I'm able to require alphanumeric password. Now, this is something you have to think long and hard about. You're going to be requiring a long password every time the PIN lockout period occurs. So you have to think about the usability for your customers and your users. But we do have a number of enterprises that want to be able to use this kind of thing. But remember, if you're going to type a 10-digit password in, you're probably not going to do that while you're driving your car. So that's a use case scenario that you need to plan for. But this is supported now via the phone. And basically what happens is, if you have a number of mailboxes, you're able to do this, and it will enforce the most restrictive policy. So I may have, for example, a Live account and a Hotmail account, and then maybe an Exchange Enterprise account. If I put the alphanumeric strong password policy on that phone, then every time the user wants to get onto the phone, because they have one particular account that requires that, they will have to put in their password. Okay. Now, one of the really neat features that we've added as well that's related to this is, and I'm going to show you on the phone itself, is this policy here. So I've got a simple PIN password here on my device. This is a Mango device. And once I've logged on to it with my simple PIN, now I haven't enforced a complex password on this one yet, but I have a simple password. One of the interesting things that I can do now is the current release of the phone, if I turn my phone off and turn it back on, I have to immediately put in my password again. But we have a grace period that's configured on the phone that is enforceable partially by policy, but the user has the access to change the experience. So you see how I have 5 minutes for, this is really what I would call the grace period. Here it says require a password every 5 minutes. As long as I make that less than the lock policy from Exchange, which ours is 15 minutes, I'm able to control how often I'm going to have to put my PIN back in. So when I turn my phone off, if I start it after 5 minutes, I'm going to have to put my PIN back in. But anytime less than 5 minutes, I can turn it on, I swipe my finger, and I'm back in the interface. This is a big win for usability, I think, compared to our current release that has, in the current release, I'd have to put that PIN in every time I turn the phone on and off. Every time, no matter if it's 10 seconds or 20 minutes. So the complexity piece is also a very handy feature. I'm not going to show you how to put in a complex password because that takes a little time, but it's important that we're supporting that, and I'll show you later some other features that we have with Exchange in terms of management. Any questions on that particular piece? So once again, we have, just to review, the Exchange policy can be enforced now to have alphanumeric password and password complexity. So I can control whether I have uppercase, lowercase, special characters, and a mixture of numbers. And I can also control the length of that. That password is not an Exchange password. It's not a NT password. It's nothing more than a local password that the user has chosen. Okay? So that's very similar to the PIN that you saw just a minute ago, only now we're giving the users, administrators facility, the ability to control that user experience. So that's an important feature for a lot of our enterprises. They've asked for the password complexity and also alphanumeric instead of just having a 4-digit or 5-digit PIN. And so that's a feature that's been added in Mango. Okay, so here's a quick chart for, get back up the screen there. All right. Okay, so these are the features for ActiveSync by Exchange version. I don't expect you to remember all these, but this basically is intended to show you that there is a little bit of functionality limitation on the Exchange 2003 platform. There's more functionality, obviously, in 2007. The big ones that you get in Exchange 2010 that none of the other ones have are the nickname cache. quarantine list. Server search is a very big one, and then IRM, which we're going to demonstrate here in a few minutes. Any questions on this? All right, there'll be a quiz on these features later. Okay, so new AES policy demonstration. So I talked a little bit about IRM. IRM is designed to restrict the flow and destination and handling of email. And we're going to talk a little bit about what the infrastructure requirements are, what the exchange requirements are, the device requirements, and then I'll do a quick demonstration of how that IRM piece works. And so the following requirements exist for information rights management. The client servers in your environment have to be running Exchange 2010 SP1. You must have AD-RMS deployed in your organization, and the rights management piece is enforced by Active Directory, so you can imagine why that is. There's quite a bit of information on the web publicly available for how do you deploy AD-RMS. You must enable IRM for internal messages. This is a prerequisite for all of IRM. It's just part of the deployment. There's a mailbox policy that it must be enforced with as well. So basically, you can decide which users are going to be using that, but you can enforce that with a mailbox policy. So a good question here and a good point here is you can enable IRM for certain portions of your business if that's important. So here's a good example. The legal team, for example, might be a great place to have this enforced because the legal team is always passing documents that are of high sensitivity. So what you may consider doing is put all of your legal users into a mailbox policy that enforces IRM. So they're able to then control all of their messages. Now, one of the things you can do, this is an enterprise feature, is you could decide that all messages for that group are going to be IRM'd. But now that would be a little bit cumbersome for those users, right? Because then they'll only be able to pass messages around internally. But maybe that's what you want for your legal team. Maybe you don't really want them to use that mailbox or anything else. But keep in mind you have external users and internal users. So I'm going to send a rights message to an outside user. They're not going to be able to open that, right? So this gives you a tool to control the enterprise usage of your sensitive data. And I'm going to show you how that looks on the phone, but it's important that you know that this is not an all or nothing thing. This is what I'd like to call the a la carte. You can actually, user by user or group by group, enforce this. And it's a very powerful feature to keep sensitive information from flowing to the wrong places, to time bomb things. For example, we send out messages internal to Microsoft quite often, and basically we can have those messages expire after a certain period of time. So this is a really neat thing to do because if there are software releases or dates in your organization that are important, when information becomes no longer viable, release dates, those kind of things, then you can time bomb those messages at that date. So that's a policy that's very powerful. In addition to that, you have to have rights management information tagged, defined, and ActiveSync, which is a feature of 14.1, which is part of the SP1 update for Exchange 2010. So these are all basic things that you can read about on the web. So let me give you a quick demonstration of what IRM looks like on the phone. So it's been more than 5 minutes. I'm going to go back into my device here. I'm going to look for a message from my colleague, Rob, if I can type. Okay. Can everybody see that in the back? Good? Okay. So this is an IRM message. We can see from the lock icon there and the protected message piece that this particular message is FTE all rights except copy and print. So basically, the rights of this message and the documents contained within it, if there are any. In this case, there's an attachment, are all afforded these rights. So if you weren't to have a phone that could read this, you would basically have a blob that says this is a protected message and you're unable to read this, right? So what we've got here then is a way to enforce the capability to reply. This particular message, we don't have restrictions in terms of reply and forward, but it's FTE only, right? So if this message, if there were other people that were on the message that were not FTEs, and this is the way what we call full-time employees, then you would not be able to read the message. So another feature here, let's look at one that has no forward. So I can show you. It's hard to do this when it's not in your hand. Let me just. Okay, so here's one that's flagged do not forward. And this is the kind that you'd want to have for perhaps your legal team, right? So you notice that you're not able to forward, print, or copy this content. And how do we enforce that? Well, if you take a look at the device, the forward option is grayed out. So this is the enforcement of the rule set attached to this message. I'm able to reply to Rob, but I'm not able to forward it. I can't forward it to anybody else. I can only reply to him. So this is a really important data leak protection mechanism that allows us to keep messages from going to the places we don't want it to go. Any questions on the way this works? Why it's important? Is this going to be important for anybody here in the field? Anybody here in the audience? Okay. So I think this is a really powerful feature for the enterprise. This is something that you should consider and take a look at and do a little bit more investigation into your organization. But it's a very powerful feature to control the information flow around your organization. So yes, so the IRM client comes in the Mango release of the phone. So in the fall time period, all Windows Phone 7 devices will have the ability to run the Mango release and therefore consume IRM messages, right? Any other questions on that? Okay. How many people here use certificates with Exchange? Okay. So one of the things we just wanted to talk about to make sure everybody had a clear understanding of is what we have available within Exchange. There's a number of ways we can install certificates for Windows Phone 7. And this exists today. This is not a Mango feature. This is something that exists in the release product today. So you can install certificates by a couple different means. One is you can access any available URL, whether it be an internal URL via Wi-Fi or an external URL via your wide area network. You're able to then grab it. You can grab a certificate and install from there. You're also able to email a certificate in .cer, P7b, or PFX format from inside your organization. Now, why is this important? Well, a lot of users and a lot of enterprise customers want to make sure that when they're accessing their Exchange environment, it's not only just their password and username, but they also have something local to the device that identifies them as having access. And what that is a certificate granted by your local certificate authority. The way we typically recommend doing this is you would have a self-signed cert that you then chain up to the public certs that are available on the device. And these are the public certs that are available on the device, and the CAs that are available, are published and well known. So basically you can purchase a certificate from a certificate authority such as VeriSign or GoDaddy, one of those, and you can chain that certificate authority up to the public certs that are available, public CAs that are available via our phone, right? This ensures that you're going to have a valid path back to a verifiable CA. Any questions on this? Does this make sense to everybody, or are we still asleep this morning? No? Okay. So we have a lot of information on root and certificate installation on the web. I've got a link here at the bottom of the slide if you want to go through the slides at the end. That's a very powerful way of not only controlling, it's basically another form of authentication. Authentication isn't only something you have and something you know. Something you know would be your password, something you have would be the phone, but also the certificate that identifies you as being part of your organization. So that's just another form of authentication and a more secure method than just username and password. Okay, so device management using EAS policies. So these are the policies we have to maintain management of the device. These are all in the existing product. None of these are new to Mango, so these are all in released product today. And for those of you who are familiar with Exchange, you would be familiar with these. For those of you who don't run an Exchange environment, probably aren't that interested. But basically, we're able to restrict, once you've attached to an Exchange environment, whether they're going to have a password or whether we're going to require a PIN. And in the case of the PIN here, we have the PIN in the current release. Then, as I mentioned, you'll be able to specify a complex password in Mango. So this password required is today a PIN of varying lengths. And then in Mango release, you'll be able to require complex passwords and an alphanumeric password. So that's what this password requirement would enforce, and that's done at the server level. Once a user attaches to your Exchange server, these policies are enforced. A lot of our users, a lot of our enterprise customers say, well, we don't want to enforce this, or what happens once I enforce this? This is an opt-in kind of situation. If you're using your phone for enterprise purposes and you attach to an Exchange environment that has a password policy, it is going to be enforced as long as you're using that method, right? So this is an important management piece. If you're going to have email from your organization flowing around, you want to make sure that the device locks at a certain period of time and has a password, and that's what this management facility does. So moving down the list here, we can set a password expiration. In other words, not only can we enforce the fact that you need a password, but we can also enforce how often it's changed. In addition to that, we can also restrict password reuse. So you can control how many different passwords you have to set before you can reuse one, or if you could ever reuse one. In addition to that, we also have the minimum password length, which is probably well known by the field here, because most of the enterprise folks have probably pins set. So you can specify 2, 4, 6, 10, however many digits in the pin you want to make sure the users use to get onto the phone. And then the idle timeout frequency, which we mentioned earlier. This determines how long before that unlock actually occurs. And again, remember that in Mango, you also have the ability within that time frame to unlock your device without the PIN. So this is a usability feature. You can set that any time less than the time that your lockout is set by the policy. So you have a policy, you kind of have a local policy and then an enterprise policy. The local policy has to be less than the enterprise policy. And the big one here is the number of times it takes for a wrong PIN entry before your phone is wiped and your daughter's in trouble because she was playing with your phone and it's now been back to scratch. So This is a security mechanism, contrary to a lot of people's belief. Is if you don't want your phone to be wiped, then you might not want to let your 2-year-old put the wrong password in a few times. And how many people have had this happen? Okay, so this is a pretty good crowd here. We have a lot of enterprise users that complain about the number of times they're allowed to put the wrong PIN in, and basically the response from IT is, well, you need to not let children handle your phone. So, yep, question.
Say the person has forgotten the password.
Mm-hmm.
There was some kind of reset feature inside Exchange that allows the administrator to reset the
Yeah, actually there is. There's actually a couple different features. There's via Outlook Web Access, which a user can get to with their username and password, right? Not the PIN. They can actually recover their PIN. And in addition to that, the admin can also reset the PIN if they forgot it and were worried that their phone was about to be flashed.
Do we get a message to say you have one more time before?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember the user experience on the. I haven't actually tried to put the wrong password in. I think you get warned at the end. In the previous releases, you were able to. You got a really kind of archaic one that said you needed to put in 1, 2, 3, 4 and type yes. It's not nearly that obtrusive. This is your last chance. Yeah. 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 That's a good question. I mean, it's not like you just type it in twice and then on the third one it just blows up. You do get some notification. It's not nearly as obvious as it used to be, and I think that's a good thing. I'd rather have the thing be flashed, and then instead of having it be a little bit lenient. This is a security mechanism, and it's going to enforce. So the other thing to keep in mind is if you set a complex password, you may want to consider giving them a few more attempts at getting it right. If it's a 4-digit PIN, maybe 5 is enough. But I would suggest to you, if it were a 10-digit complex password, that you may want to give them a few more chances. So that's another use case you have to play with on your own. And again, you can assign different policies to different groups of people. So perhaps some groups you want to frustrate more, you could do that. You can make sure if you want to set a 20-character complex password on a 3-inch screen. Okay, so SharePoint and Windows Phone 7. Any other questions on the policies? I want to make sure this is a really important piece. Sure.
Is Exchange the only available management platform that you can use for this? And at one point, earlier versions, you had a separate product that was mobile device management.
Right.
Has that gone away?
That's a good question. The question was, is there any other facility to manage Windows Phone 7 other than Exchange, similar to our previous product, the MDM, Mobile Device Management Service? The answer is no. The Exchange is really the only way to manage the policies, and these are the only policies that are manageable in the current release. So we don't have the full capability of management similar to the previous releases, but then this phone is targeted a little differently. So this is what you have to manage the phone via Exchange. You can use other third-party products that allow to manage these same policies. So let me be a little bit more clear. There are other ways to manage it. So for example, System Center, another one of our products, can actually manage these same policies for you from the System Center console. And as a matter of fact, the System Center console, this is a 2012 functionality, can actually feed all of your inventory information and all this information up into a single pane of glass, so you can see your devices and your desktops all in one interface. But all it's doing is proxying these commands, and setting these policies in Exchange, because your device doesn't attach to System Center, it attaches to Exchange. So there's a number of other products that are able to enforce these policies via another management console. MobileIron and a number of other ones are able to do this. So to say that there's no other way to do it is a little misleading, but these are the only policies you can set. So the way you set those policies is there's a lot of different ways to set the policies, but it's still enforced by Exchange, and these are really the only enforceable policies. Is that good? Any other questions on Exchange policies? One back here? I'm not sure. I can't really hear you that well. Can you want to step up to the mic?
Is there any enterprise deployment management tools for this to let you set up all username, password, or username and all that to just put in their password, kind of like the iPhone does?
So that's a good question. iPhone actually uses the same protocol. It's our protocol. It's ActiveSync. Enterprise ActiveSync is our protocol, and basically the passwords are all set for your mailbox in AD, which then is fed via Exchange. It's the same thing. It's the same protocol and same exact process that the Apple folks use. It's our protocol. You can make it just that simple. You don't have to define any of these policies, or you can define any one of them. So there should be no difference. There is no difference in those other platforms. Christian.
iPhone, you push down a profile that already has your URL for the ActiveSync server. Push it down and make it easier on the end user.
I think I understand the question a little bit better now. So what we have is an auto discovery process. If you know your email address and your password, you don't need to know the settings to attach to the ActiveSync server at all. So and we have something that's quite possibly a little bit better, because basically if you know your email address and your password, you can auto discover the server settings. So for those of you who don't understand, there's when you want to set up ActiveSync, you need to know how to connect to a server that presents your mail to you. And basically, we've got an auto discovery process that's built via DNS and discovery records that allows you to put your email address in and your password. What the phone does, we'll go look up that domain. So let's say it's Microsoft.com, for example. We'll go then look up that domain, find that mailbox via the username, just by the email address, and then proxy that server for what are the settings that I need to connect to that. That's returned automatically to the device, no configuration needed by the user. The user's password is then passed back up, and then the ActiveSync process will start. So synchronization can occur, and really, there is nothing to know but your Exchange email address and password. Now, again, there's a few pieces that your administrator would have to set up to make it work that way. Auto discovery is just a couple of DNS entries and configuration on the back end so that it can provide that to the user automatically, so they don't have to remember the URL for your Exchange server, because usually it's a long name, or maybe it's not that intuitive. So, good question. Did we answer your question there? I think it's pretty similar. Basically, you're going to put your username and password in, and it's going to go and find the server for you automatically.
What I was actually referring to is like Apple has a profile deployment set up for VPN, their web, wireless policies, things like that. Set all that up on phone, and just type in the password.
Yeah, so we don't have anything to set up the Wi-Fi automatically for you. We wouldn't advocate setting the password up for you automatically. Obviously, that's something you wouldn't want to do. So we don't have something exactly like you're saying, or exactly like you're suggesting, but we do have the ability to locate the Exchange server and get connected to it automatically. All right, so we're going to move on to SharePoint features. The SharePoint configuration or SharePoint capabilities in Windows Phone 7 are straightforward. The SharePoint client is built directly into Office, and it's basically a UAG client which provides support via forms-based auth back to your organization. So this is very similar to publishing Exchange ActiveSync on the internet. So basically, this allows a way for you to, via SSL VPN, using UAG or a forms-based auth mechanism, to connect back to your SharePoint and open up documents, share documents, post back documents, and so forth. So I'm going to show you a quick, I'm not going to go through the posting of apps or posting of documents, but I'm going to quickly show you the Office piece here, if I can find it. So Office here, in the Office Hub, we have a SharePoint client built in directly. And from here, you're able to click on SharePoint, and then I don't have this configured at the moment, but basically you're able to open any URL and any number of URLs to your SharePoint environment, which are published via the web. So this allows me to open documents, post documents, save documents back to my SharePoint site with users that are using them on site and so forth. So that keeps a local copy of it. I'm able to change documents and post them back, open up Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents, and use them interactively and collaborate directly with my team who may be back in the office. And this is a really powerful differentiation that our Phone 7 platform has compared to the other platforms on the market. And the key thing to remember here is that this is not going to launch a web interface to SharePoint. This is basically a GUI version of SharePoint on your phone, right? And it's touch aware, so you're able to find documents, load them up, make changes to them, and repost them, and not fumble through a web interface that's on a 4-inch screen. This is a really powerful feature of the platform. In addition to that, we're able to be notified when documents have changed, like your teammates may make a change, and you can, when you go to that instance, you'll see that the document's been updated. And another feature that's really important on the SharePoint side is that the phone platform is able to make sure that if you have multiple SharePoint sites, so how many folks have departmental SharePoint deployments in their organization? Yeah. So yeah, this is an important feature. So I may have my team's SharePoint, and I may have the marketing team's SharePoint site, and I may have 4 or 5 others. I can set up, just like URLs on the phone, I can set up a number of different SharePoint sites, and they may actually have different authentication for each of them, and I can put those into the configuration of each of those. So I'm able to traverse a number of SharePoint sites with different credentials. They may be even different companies. You may want to enable partners, business partners, and other people outside your company to access certain parts of your SharePoint site. So that's a very powerful feature that allows for SharePoint to be fully utilized within your environment. That is built into the current product and goes forward with Mango as well. So really no changes on the SharePoint side. So that's available today. It does require SharePoint 2010 on the back end, because SharePoint 2009 doesn't have all the features that we need for that. So the requirements are SharePoint 2010, publishing it via a forms-based auth, and Mango or release devices. So now I want to talk a little bit about a line of business application demonstration. I'll show you an app. All right, so this is a good example of an enterprise application deployed via the marketplace. Most folks have been asking, I can't put my corporate application in the marketplace because it's not going to be secure and anybody can download it. Well, this is a methodology and an approach that I suggest you think about seriously, because it's a great way to deploy enterprise apps via the marketplace. So we've got an app here called Gear Up Mobile, and it's an app that Microsoft created. And what we've done is we've put this app on the marketplace, but the way the app works is you basically download a shell, and nothing happens in the app until you've actually authenticated. So I'll show you what I mean. So I've downloaded the app, and the reason I did that is because I wanted to make sure I didn't do anything different before the app started. I'm going to hit the sync button here. So notice what's happened here. I've been dumped into a place where there's basically nothing I can do but search for something that I don't have on the phone. It's a shell of an app. There's no information, there's no corporate data, there's nothing in here that's dangerous to share. So I've got this in the marketplace. Anybody could get to this point. No problems there, right? All right, so now if I hit the sync button, I'm going to be given, please treat this information properly, the legalese. Hit the accept button, and now it's going to ask me to synchronize, right? So basically what's happened here is I've accepted the legalese that I'm not going to use this improperly, and now I'm going to hit the sync button, which says I want to do something, right? And I'm immediately going to be placed here to a logon screen, right? What's going to happen now, and I'm not going to go through the sign-in process here, but I'm going to talk to you about it. Basically, what happens at this point, I'm going to put my credentials in, and via SDS and Active Directory and a controlled security environment, I'm going to then log on securely with an encrypted passage of my credentials over. I'm going to locate this application. I'm going to then provision what happens in the application, which is basically, this app is basically a catalog of a lot of our services and products. So the sync takes a couple of minutes because it's basically all just product details. But this is a methodology which I suggest that you think about for enterprise apps, because basically what we want you to think about is that marketplace is a distribution method. It is not a security realm. There is a small amount of security in that you need to have a live ID, but that's not a secure mechanism to deploy an enterprise app. So what we're suggesting here is that you think about the way you're deploying enterprise apps. Using Marketplace as a distribution mechanism and then having another mechanism for security is a recommended way to go about securing enterprise apps. Now, would you rather have something like a private marketplace? Perhaps. But this is a way of doing this with the currently existing product today. This is available today. This is not hard to do. It's a very simple concept. You deploy the app with one method, and then you secure the app via credentials in your organization, which is what most enterprises want to do anyway. I want to secure my enterprise app with my own enterprise credentials. Why would I want to do that with Live ID anyway, even if it was a security mechanism? So, questions?
You mentioned a private app catalog, so there are products out there that do that today. Is it going to be secure?
We have nothing to announce on private marketplace today. We know that's a feature we'd like to have. We think that's a future product feature that we're going to have. But we feel like there are many other things that we need to address before that, and this is my suggestion that this is a way of giving private marketplace without the big hassle. Now, there's a couple other things that can be added to this that would help as well, and one is that you can distribute a hidden link so you can't see these marketplace apps in the marketplace unless you have that link. So it doesn't secure the fact that people could download it, but it obscures the way of finding the app. So I can make this app non-searchable, and then internally I could send out a link to get to that app, and then secure it with my own credentials like I've shown here. So that's a way of doing it. Question?
What about this sync to 2012? Is there any way to deploy it?
It's a good question. The question is there a way to deploy apps via System Center 2012? There are no features in 2012 for private marketplace or deploying web apps directly to WinPhone 7. You're still going to have to deploy through the marketplace. I believe that the Gear Up folks are making some of the source code available for this. If you are interested in that, we can contact them. Has he got it on? Rob has it on his blog. Rob has this on his blog, is what Alan is telling us. If you should be able to find the Gear Up stuff directly in the marketplace. I mean, I just did it, so you can find that out there. And I believe, and if you need more information on that, you can let me know. I know that they are making it available. Okay, so I'm going to blast through a couple things, and then I got to have a giveaway. The Windows Phone updates are available directly via Zune. We have two types of updates. One is directly from Microsoft, which is the operating system. Oh, my bad. Thanks. We have two types of updates. Windows Phone update from Microsoft, and the phone market application updates that come from the OEM and the MOs. So we'll blast through that. This is pretty straightforward. The Microsoft updates come from us. The OEM updates and MO updates come from the phone manufacturers and the mobile operators. And we are to question and answer here. Okay. So I have to give away a phone. Well, I'll take one question, then I got to give away this phone. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a good question. Any phone that's currently in the marketplace that runs Windows Phone 7 will be upgradable to Mango. Okay, so all the phones that are in market today, and all the phones that will be released in the Mango timeframe, the ones that are released in the fall will have Mango on them directly. The ones that are in marketplace today, you can upgrade directly with Zune to Mango. So every Windows Phone 7 device is upgradable to Mango. It's a good question. There is a certification process that goes with each MO and with each OEM, but there is that process is happening pretty quickly, as you've probably seen. We just released a number of updates in February and March, so there is an update process and a verification process. The carriers don't let just anything jump on their network. That's not the way it works. So there is a verification process. So let me give away this phone, and then if you have other questions, you can come up